Hey there, welcome to the most northern location on the WRC calendar, Central Finland. This is the first location for my EA Sports WRC country guides. In each episode I'll try to give advice on two things: how to find good tuning and setup for the car, as well as tips on driving for the local challenges. Let's get started with this Nordic one, probably the most iconic gravel rally of them all. For a recommendation of proving ground, I have used this stage, Hatanpää, here as the one to tune in the setup. It has a lot of fast corners and some big jumps right at the beginning and condenses the character of the whole location nicely. Excuse me if I have slightly butchered the pronunciation here. So, before going into Finland's character, some basics on springs and dampers. They always work together. Your springs can store energy and your dampers control the flow of energy. Maybe imagine your springs as a bucket of water. You have a pipe into the bucket and a hole in the bottom out of the bucket. Those are your dampers. Usually, all impact forces would push the car around. But with this energy bucket, you can buffer the energy and release it in a controlled and slower way. The spring rate controls the size of this bucket. The more force is taken to compress a set distance of spring, the more tension energy it holds. The bucket gets larger. Your ride height controls this also, because to make a car higher, it needs longer springs. Now they, even with the same stiffness per centimeter, are now even longer, so they can hold more tension. Next, your bump rebound damper. That is the hole in the bucket. It controls how fast the energy goes out, how fast your spring is allowed to bounce back. The slow bump is the pipe going into the bucket. How fast is the spring allowed to take energy in? This pipe has a bypass hole. If suddenly a load of water comes in, it can open to allow a faster flow of energy. That would be your fast bump damper setting. Finally, the bump division tells your dampers when exactly this bypass is opened. Okay, much info. Let's see a bad example. Here we see a high ride height but soft springs. And the dampers take in energy really fast. They are very big holes. So on this jump we see how the hole springs are compressed into the car's wheel arches. This is bad. It damages your vehicle and makes the landing very bouncy, because at that point the leftover force is transferred to the car directly. Sadly, the game has no strong sound to make you hear this, but you feel it in the wheel and how the car behaves on the landing of a jump. For the driving scenes here, I used the cockpit camera. Not only does it show my input of the wheel, but also the camera shake conveys visually what forces the car experienced. In driving, I prefer dashcam, but for YouTube I think it is easier to follow when you can see some of the forces. A little side tip here: when your car has a very big covering of your windscreen with some logo or some sunshine reflector, you can create your own livery for the car and remove that so you can see better out of your car. Okay, now let's see the other end of the spectrum. This is a setup with maximum stiffness of the spring and also maximum ride height. So this is the maximum energy budget that the suspension can have. The largest bucket possible. Also with some slower rebound dampers, so that the energy gets released over time and not like a trampoline. Here you see the difference. Now the car lands much smoother, which gives you better control over it. Actually, we see that now there is a bunch of space left in the wheel arch, even at the maximum compression. So we did not use all of the bucket, there was space left. In summary, harder springs or higher ride height means more energy. Weaker springs move more distance with less force and therefore less energy. Slow bump controls the speed of energy charge. Fast bump is a bypass speed if a lot of energy hits at once. Bump division sets up this bypass point. And rebound sets the speed of energy discharge. Okay? Now, what can you do with it? You want a car that soaks up all the jumps and big bumps like curbstones or road edges without unsettling the car. You also want a car that has a low center of gravity and does not sway a lot in corners to keep faster cornering speeds. But these two things are opposites. So your setup goal is to find the best sweet spot for a given location. Exactly enough capacity to soak up all jumps and bumps, but not any more than necessary, so as to keep as much stiffness as possible. Which concludes the basics of springs and dampers. If there is something unclear, please ask in the comments. I'll try to respond in time. Now, how to set up for Finland. As you saw, we don't need the maximum energy. Actually, Finland does not have the largest jumps of all rallies. It just has the most jumps. So I tried around, lowered height and stiffness until I reached a point where the springs are almost max compressed on the largest jumps. This can differ for your personal driving style and for the car in question. So you gotta experiment around with some settings. Same process to find a good slow soft bump setting and where to set the bump division. Rule of thumb though, in most cases your fast bump should be the fastest setting. The slow bump should be in the middle and the rebound should be the slowest of the three settings. Take in energy fast, release it slower. After some experimenting, I found this tune to be very capable for the Rally 1 Puma. I also made the final gear a smidge longer to max out the gears only on the longest straights. Literally touched nothing else. Differential and brakes are on default, and alignment you never need to touch anyway. For channel newcomers who don't blindly believe everything some random guy says on the internet. First of all, good critical thinking. Keep that alive. Secondly, here is the leaderboard. Time I drove with my own setup, using exactly my advice here. You'll also find the ghost time on the RaceNet app to analyze. The car feels very controllable and quite a bit more planted down than the default. So, onto the driving aspect of Finland. As I said, it has the most jumps of any location. That is its main difficulty. Though I must say I find it much easier to control than back in Dirt Rally 2. Here in Dirt Rally 3 you can actually set the car up to soak up all the jumps and keep control through the whole event. As with all rally events, listening to your pace notes is key here. All jumps, blind crests and what is waiting behind is called out to you in the notes. For jumps in general, try to never brake across them. Either let it roll or, even better, put the throttle down. This ensures the weight will be in the back and you have a stable position in the air. For the corners, a bit more practice goes into anticipating the loss of contact. Like when you need to jump through a corner. Compared to a normal slide, you need to initiate the drift even earlier, when you anticipate to lose contact for a second mid-corner. This also applies to crests without a jump, since your grip decreases anyway and your wheels convey much less force on top of a crest. You can imagine such a jump turn like a two-corner, like on normal gravel. Like where the pace notes would say something like opens and tightens. Mid-corner, in such a corner, you are going straight for a bit before you continue the turning. A jump forces this movement onto you. So it is merely a matter to anticipate it and initiate a turn earlier enough. It takes a bit of practice, but with time you'll find a good rhythm. If your setup is good and the jumping has been learned, Finland is actually not very technical to drive, though it is a lot of fun to get it right. I find it now much improved and closer to real rally onboards here in this game. That would be it. I hope the suspension basics help you in general, and the setup and driving tips for Finland help you to fly faster through Finnish forests. Next I plan to cover Croatia, to give a smooth baseline for tarmac driving. Until then, tranquil madness.